who are on the Zoom call, but for the people who may watch the recording at a subsequent date. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'll walk through. I think the visuals help. I'll talk about, as Kelly said, the election and the historic mill district, but I have a slide about annual town meeting, because I think there are a lot of questions out there about how that's taking shape, and I can provide some updates on what's being planned on that front. So let me share my screen. Okay, I assume everyone can see this. So again, 3 topics: the primary, the September 12th annual town meeting. It's weird to say that annual town meeting is happening in September. Normally it happens in April and May, but this is our annual town meeting. And I'll talk about the historic mill district in the town yard. And I think I'll take questions on each of the 3 topics after I've given my spiel on the topic, so you don't have to wait till I've talked about topic 3 to ask your questions about topic 1. All right, so the state primary election. It's certainly in the news. I know it's on everyone's mind. So the question is, what's on the ballot? People tend to think that we've got a presidential election in November, and they may, in their minds, go past September, but this election is important too. 4 parties will be selecting candidates to run in the general election in November. So Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, and Green Rainbow. And what will we be voting for? Senator, representative in Congress, governor's council, counselor, state senator, state representative, and register of probate. So those are the positions that are on the ballot. And depending on where you live in town, which precinct you're in, you will have different candidates to choose for those offices. So here's the thing that I think people have most questions about. How are they supposed to vote in this COVID environment with changing legislation, changing rules? And there are 3 ways to vote, all of which should be familiar to most people because they're not that new, but the details and the implementation of them are new. And so I'll speak to each of them. So of course, it goes without saying, at least in Massachusetts, that you can still vote in person on election day, on Tuesday, September 1st. You can also vote in person during the early voting period. And you can vote by mail, or you can vote by mail. You can't do all 3. Yeah, you can only do one. So let's see here. All right, so now we'll talk about each of them. So voting in person on election day. Election day is Tuesday, September 1st, which is 2 weeks from yesterday. The polls will open at 7 a.m. They'll close at 8 p.m. That's the normal arrangement. The 3 polling locations will be the same as we had in the March presidential primary, in the June town election. So most precincts will vote at Andover High School Fieldhouse. Others will vote at the Woodhill Gym, and 2 precincts, precincts 1 and 3, will vote at the Youth Center Gym, which has replaced for the time being the Senior Center, because of course the Senior Center is under construction. Another important point I want to emphasize is the precautions we're taking to take care of the safety from a health perspective of voters and our poll workers. So anyone who voted in June will be familiar with this arrangement. We're doing a lot of different things to try to keep people as safe as possible. And I think most people, certainly everyone we heard from, was very comfortable voting in June. Face masks are available for voters who do not bring them. And of course, the poll workers will be wearing face masks. Our poll workers will be wearing gloves. There will be plexiglass barriers at check-in and check-out that separate the poll workers from any voter. Any voter can bring blue or black pens or markers to fill out their ballot, so they can bring their own writing utensil as long as it's a blue or black pen or marker. And for anyone who doesn't bring their own writing utensil, we have them. We have enough, we think, that they'll only be used once throughout the day. And if a utensil doesn't need to be used twice, we'll clean them between uses. Hand sanitizer will be available at every polling location. And then distancing. For me, this is one of the biggest issues. in terms of, this is one of the biggest assets of our arrangement. So people are familiar with how the precincts are usually set up. Whatever your polling location is, there's a check-in table, then there are voting booths, then there's a check-in, then there's the ballot box, and then you've got the warden and the clerk behind. We've maintained that structure, but we have put it on steroids in terms of the amount of real estate that every precinct occupies. So we worked with town engineers to conceptualize how much space would be needed for each precinct. Each precinct occupies about 3,600 square feet. So a big house, a big one-story house. And that's because we have 6 feet between check-in and any voting booth, 6 feet between voting booths, 6 feet between the last voting booth and checkout, 6 feet between checkout and the ballot box, 6 feet between the ballot box and the wardens and clerks. So we have a lot of space. And no one will feel crowded. So those are some of the precautions that we're taking on election day. All right, method number 2. Someone can vote in person during the early voting period. Early voting, which has usually been held in the town offices, is being held at the field house. And the reason we've changed it to the field house is because, again, we need more real estate to spread people out. So you can go to early voting, all precincts, 1 through 9, at the field house, and that starts this Saturday, believe it or not. So on Saturday and Sunday, early voting will be available from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's for this weekend. And then Monday through Friday, early voting will be available 8:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. And the precautions that we're taking for in-person early voting are the same precautions that we're taking for in-person voting on election day. So that will also be a safe environment. Okay, the last way that you can choose to vote is by mail. Every registered voter was mailed by the state a postcard, an application to receive a vote by mail ballot. And so here's the process for how you apply for a ballot, how you receive a ballot, and how you return the ballot so that you will have voted remotely by mail. Okay, so you need to apply for a ballot. We can't just send people out ballots. We can send people applications, which is the state has done, but we can't send people ballots. Those need to be controlled in a very careful way. So you apply for a ballot by August 26th at 5 p.m. So that's next Wednesday. And you can give us that application by mailing it to us, like the postcard that you got. Or you can put it in a drop box that's available at the semicircular driveway at the town offices, 36 Bartlett Street. Or you can download the application from the town clerk's website, and you can email the application to us, and those instructions are on the town clerk's webpage. So if you can't find the postcard that the state mailed to you, you can find that application online. So that's step 1. Let us know that you want a ballot. Then we will mail you a ballot. That's the easiest thing you have to do. Just sit there and wait for the ballot to come. Then once you get the ballot, you need to complete it and you need to return it to us. So that needs to be returned to us by September 1st, election day at 8 p.m. And you can return it to us by mailing it to the town clerk's office, 36 Bartlett Street, or by dropping it off yourself in the drop box at the town offices. So that's an important point. If you look at this 3-step process, you can apply for the ballot without using the postal service. You can just drop it off to us. And you can return your ballot without using the postal service. You can just drop it off to us. So if you are concerned that time is getting short and you're worried about the postal service being able to keep up with the volume, then you have the option of dropping off your application. Then once you've completed your ballot, dropping off your ballot. So that's voting. I'll stop here to see if there are any questions before I move on to town meeting. Perfect. Okay, town meeting. Again, this was supposed to, is there a question?
Yeah, so Jane, go ahead.
I had a question for you. Some people might be thinking of this.
Sure.
What if you requested a mail ballot, but changed your mind and decided you want to go vote? Is that going to be a conflict for people?
So that's a good question. I have to look to see if the legislation that was recently approved has changed this, but the way it's typically handled and the way I suspect it will be handled in this case is if you requested an early voting ballot but haven't returned that ballot to us yet, you can still go vote in person. You may have to, the warden of that precinct may have to ask questions or may have to call me, the town clerk, to sort it out. But yeah, if you've requested an early voting ballot, but you haven't returned it to us, then we're probably, unless I find something, some changes in the recent legislation and regulations from the state, you're probably going to be able to vote in person.
I had a question.
I have a
Sure.
question.
If you have, I have my mail-in ballot and I drop it off at town hall, do I get a notification that you received it?
No,
No.
but you can check on the Secretary of State's website to see the status of your ballot.
Oh, I have to go to the Secretary of State?
I believe so.
Okay, you as town clerk don't notify us that it,
We know it, but we don't proactively notify.
oh, okay.
That would be just for logistical reasons,
Yeah,
you know,
I can understand that.
yeah.
But also, the drop box, is that inside? Do we come into the building?
Great question. So there are two. There's the regular town business mail drop box on the
Right.
semicircle that's always been there. You can use that. Or during the hours of 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., you can drop it off in a red drop box under the awning at that first floor entrance at the semicircle.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I
Good
have a question. I have a
Yes.
question. Will there be a copy of the ballot printed somewhere so we can see that ballot in advance of voting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we have that on the town clerk's website, an example so you can see. We also have them posted at the polling locations, but if you're not voting in person, I believe that's online. And if you can't find it, feel free to just shoot me an email and I will find it for you.
Okay, so will it be published in the newspaper, you think, in the Townsman?
No. We publish local ballots, but we don't publish state ballots or federal ballots because they weren't under local control.
Okay. So
But,
the only way is, tell me again how to apply, look on the town, what did you say?
Sure.
Where
If
to
you
look
go
for
to
it?
if you go to the town website and then the town clerk department elections pages, it should be there. And if it's not, after we get off this call, I'm going to look myself. If you can't find it, feel free to give our office a call and we will help you get that information.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? The other thing I'll say is, relative to that last question, the problem is there are let me figure this out here. There are 12 kinds of ballots because you have 4 parties and then 3 ballot styles because precincts, 2 through 4 have a certain ballot: Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green, Rainbow. Then precincts 1, 7 through 9 have a different ballot style: Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green, Rainbow. And then ballots 1 and 6 have, because again, Andover is sliced and diced between different congressional districts and different state rep districts. So primaries are complicated. They're a nightmare for everyone, but there's a lot going on with a primary like this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, ready for town meeting?
Yep.
So this is taking shape daily. And ultimately, I should say, the select board is involved with this. The moderator has a huge say in all of this. The town manager does. So I don't want to speak for anyone, but I'm giving you the latest understanding of a fluid plan. But I think what I'm sharing with you today is pretty well set in stone. So, okay. The town meeting will be held Saturday, September 12th at 9:30 a.m. The goal is to, and our expectation is that it will be a one-day meeting. We will meet until all of the articles on the warrant are disposed of. The meeting will be in a field behind West Middle School. So you see Shawshene Road at the top, West Middle School there. At the bottom left is Andover High School. So that's the field that we're looking to use. And we are going to use, all right, here's the technical town clerk legal term. We're using a huge tent. This is going to be outdoors. We are going to be able to accommodate 700 plus residents, and there's going to be social distancing. So the tent that we are using is 28,000 square feet. It is a huge tent. We want people to be protected from the sun, from the rain, but we want them to be outside because we know that transmission is less likely outside, and we want people to be distanced because we know keeping distance is important to curbing transmission. There will be 4 distance check-in stations, so we will not have hundreds of people congregating in one check-in area. You'll be able to check in at the 4 corners of the tent, depending on where you've parked. And of course, people will be wearing masks. So that is the plan for annual town meeting, at least from a logistical standpoint. We're excited about it, and our goal all along, the moderator, the town manager, and I, what we've said is we want a town meeting that the community is proud of. We want a town meeting where people feel safe, but we want to find a way to have a town meeting that is actually a town meeting, where people can come together and have a community dialogue about important issues, and then it's not merely some sort of rubber stamping of decisions that have already been made, and it's not something that is squelched by the pandemic that's all around us. So stay tuned on that. Any questions on town meeting? Okay, great. So I want to share something about the historic mill district and the old town yard. This is a project that I've been working with the planning division on. It's one of the most important things that town meeting will vote on in September. And as the town manager says, it's one of the most important things that Andover will do in the course of a 25-year period. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So you may be familiar with the historic mill district, which is a zoning district. It's 100 acres. It encompasses, you see Shawshene River there. You see the train tracks in the middle of the district. You have the library and towards the right of the district and part of downtown. And that star is the Old Town Yard, which is a 3.4 acre town-owned series of parcels that used to be used by our Department of Public Works. That land is no longer used by the Department of Public Works because they have a new state-of-the-art facility out on 5 Campanelli Drive. And so this entire project is about repurposing that land, selling that land, and having it redeveloped so that it can do more for the community than it's currently doing. You know, when we think about something this complicated and this big, we look back to history to kind of be our guide star. During the Industrial Revolution, the HMD was transformed, much like we're trying to do here, into a vibrant community gathering place. So these pictures are from the Andover Center for History and Culture. I love them. The HMD contained employment and recreation and children, and there were families and churches and direct access to the river, and we're trying to rekindle that. So what is our mission statement? I have it written here. Transformation driven by a desire for a reintegrated work-life community situated near transit. This is a futuristic, aspirational rendering of what the HMD may look like. This is change that goes way beyond the town yard. So this is long-term. All that the town is being asked to vote on at this town meeting is to authorize sale of the town yard and redevelopment of the town yard. But what's important to understand is that that redevelopment of the town yard will hopefully catalyze constructive change throughout the HMD that we think the community will be happy with. And how do we know what the community will be happy with? All right, so since 2015, so for the past 5 years, community on what we call a community authored plan. Find out, what does the community want to see? So in 2015, we approved the zoning overlay district. So there's the zoning in place to allow for mixed use development in the HMD, including in the Old Town Yard. In 2017 and 2018, the community put together design guidelines. Those are standards that help to make sure that development is not just consistent with zoning, which is very big picture stuff, but also consistent with the character of the community. So the design guidelines are more specific than zoning, and they say, all right, what do we want development to look like in terms of signage and wayfaring and lighting and facade material and massing, those kinds of specific things that make the historic mill district and Andover. You know, the planning director always says, we don't want to build something that looks like anywhere USA. So the design guidelines help to guide development towards that end. We also did a traffic and circulation study to understand not just how to make sure that the redevelopment is accommodated or doesn't worsen the traffic situation, but actually that we improve traffic and congestion problems that already exist. You know, it's not like the Pearson Street and Essex Street intersection, which is like a 7-way intersection. It's not like that's a wonderful situation right now, and we're just going to screw it up with the Old Town Yard. The truth is that we're going to make the status quo better, even taking into account the Old Town Yard and because of the Old Town Yard redevelopment. We also looked at placemaking. So placemaking is the idea of how do you create community gathering spaces? How do you build not just roads and buildings, but how do you build a sense of community with redevelopment? And I'll just add to this, we've done a sewer and water master plan and that kind of infrastructural study. So each one of these pieces are the building blocks that give us the information we need to tell a developer, okay, this is what we want you to do on the Old Town Yard. It's our land, we're selling it to you, but we're not going to give it to you until you show us a plan that we are comfortable with and that is consistent with all of these different community dialogues that have been going on for 5 years. So this is just a list of, these are the public meetings that have been held since this process has begun. This does not include the one-on-one conversations, the site walks, the coffee hours. This is just the public meetings that were held, that were noticed, where the public had a chance to weigh in and give us their view. And I think there have been 51 or 52. So this would be the 53rd. Okay, so, you know, that's the big picture. The way this all happens is the town issues an RFP, which is a request for proposals. The town says, okay, development community, we are willing to sell our land if someone presents us with a plan that excites us. And this request for proposals, this RFP, tells you what we want to see on our land. So this is, we're asking for a proposal from you, but the proposal needs to accommodate a whole bunch of constraints that we're putting forward. So the heart of the RFP lays out several planning objectives. And they're listed here. You don't need to read this. I'll briefly go through each of them. But there are 7 planning objectives. And the RFP articulates them. And then most importantly, the RFP says, this is how you, developer, will be graded on how well you achieve each of these planning objectives. So the first one is, we want the development to be consistent with the neighborhood context and character. So these are images of what's in the area, what's in the HMD. And the RFP says that we want the town yard to be an anchor for this area, to fit and complement the area, and to be consistent with it. We also say we want there to be placemaking. Again, we don't want just concrete. We don't want buildings and roads. We have ideas through a lot of study about how to create gathering places, how to create cultural and civic uses, how to bring the community together. And honestly, one thing that's come out of COVID is that we realize we can't always go to Boston, okay? And we can't always take the family trip out west or down to Florida or go to Europe. Whether it's technical limitations or financial limitations or a global pandemic. So if we may not be able to travel as freely as we'd like, let's build a community that provides families and couples and young people and older people the kind of sustenance that we're looking for. And that's what placemaking speaks to. Again, the traffic and circulation plan. We studied we studied traffic and circulation around the historic mill district because we wanted to understand how do we improve congestion around the district, not just proximate to the old town yard, but around the district, because we wouldn't want any solution for congestion around the town yard to disadvantage us from a congestion perspective around the historic mill district as a whole, if that makes sense. We want the local solutions not to disadvantage us more generally around the HMD. So we look at vehicular traffic, but we also have looked at pedestrian traffic and bike traffic and facilitating connections down the hill to the Shawshene River and up the hill to downtown. And we also looked at improving connectivity around the train station, which is right there abutting the town yard. So that is all articulated within this section of the RFP. Is very, very important to the community. We say we want community space. Now, whether that's open space or arts and culture space, performance space, programmable space, non-programmable, indoor, outdoor. What the RFP does is we say, be creative. We know it's only 3.4 acres. All right, so that is not a lot of space. There's not going to be giant rolling ball fields. There's not going to be a massive auditorium. There's not going to be the Austin Simko Performing Arts Center. Okay, there's not enough space for it. But we are not hiding the ball. We're letting developers know that we want these kinds of creative uses so that they can be innovative when they put forward their proposal. You know, could there be a space that serves one function on a Monday morning, but a different function on a Thursday night, and a different function on a Saturday afternoon, and a different function on a Saturday night? How can we be efficient and creative? And that's what this speaks to. And then we talk about product type, which is a term of art. It just means that we want restaurants, retail, and housing. We want a mixture of them. We want to move the ball forward on all of those fronts. We don't want only one of those. So if someone were to propose an office park, that wouldn't do it. If someone were to propose a hotel, that wouldn't do it. And if someone were to propose all housing, that wouldn't do it. So we imagine this mixed-use development would have retail and commercial on ground floors and residential on the upper floors. And this is just kind of an imaginative rendering of what that might look like. Next, environmental responsibility and consciousness. This is something that's very important to the community. In order to receive the highest possible grade, again, each of these objectives is graded by a selection committee, but in order for a proposal to receive the highest possible grade on this goal, they need to create LEED certified buildings, silver or higher. And that just means that the buildings are energy efficient, among other things. But we also want them to go a step further if they want that top grade, to create a LEED certified neighborhood. What we learned is that the town yard redevelopment in itself can be a self-contained neighborhood from the LEED perspective. And we want that neighborhood to be LEED certified silver and higher. So that means not only do we want the buildings to be energy efficient, but we want this to be walkable. We want there to be trees planted, pollinator trees, trees that are natural to this area. We want to encourage walkable communities. You know, being located on the commuter rail line already gets you a lot of points for LEED silver certification. It's a complicated analysis, so I won't get into it, but we are asking developers to stretch and give us this. And it has the benefit of making the town yard a LEED certified neighborhood, but it has the added benefit of, again, catalyzing in the future more environmentally conscious development around the historic mill district. We want energy efficiency. We want the adoption of environmentally sensitive principles. So that's renewable energy generation. Make sure, you know, can the parking lots accommodate electric vehicles, those kinds of things. And can they use low impact development design techniques? That has to do principally with pervious surfaces, dealing with rainwater and wastewater. So this is something that I know many members of the community are excited about. The last objective is we want, and it's pretty technical, but the bottom line is we want the development to adhere to the zoning bylaw that we adopted in 2015 and to the design guidelines that I talked about before. And if you look to the right, the reason the design guidelines, there are 3 colors there, is because the design guidelines are actually tailored so that there are certain design guidelines along the river in blue, along the rail line in yellow, and along downtown in green. So they get very specific with the community's benefit. Design guidelines and zoning, we want them to follow those. Okay, so last minute here. What are our next steps? So town meeting is going to be asked to bless this entire project. Town meeting is going to be asked to vote on 3 articles that allow us to move forward with this plan. The first article is Article 15, and it says, town meeting gives the select board the authority to sell the town yard in a portion of Lewis Street in conformity with the request for proposals that I just talked about. So town meeting is not giving the select board a blank check to sell the land. The land has to be sold in conformity with the RFP, which the community has written. Article 16 discontinues a portion of Lewis Street as a public way. Lewis Street in part traverses the Old Town Yard, and we're simply saying with this article, which is technical, that that portion of Lewis Street will no longer be a public way, so the developer can take the 3.4 acres and have flexibility to design it to meet our goals and doesn't have to work around this random partial road that's in the middle of the land he or she bought. And then Article 17, which is also technical, is just the town taking by eminent domain the land that the town already owns to transform the multiple parcels into one parcel. And we're just doing that for title purposes, selling the land. We're not doing a taking of any private land. We're taking our own land to convert it from 7 parcels into 1. So that's it. Does anyone have any questions about this? I know this is quite the hodgepodge, from vote by mail to town meeting under a tent to redevelopment in the Old Town Yard, but happy to answer any questions about it. Okay.
Thank you so much, Austin. That was wonderful.
Sure. All right. Well, if anyone,
But I have a question. I just
sure.
unmuted. You've done a great presentation, but I'm on a phone right now, so I haven't seen what you're talking about. Will this be on TV, on your local TV station as well? Some kind of a presentation before town meeting?
this definitely will. But also, if you are interested, we are doing a forum tomorrow night at 7 p.m. just dedicated to the Historic Mill District, this project. And there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to speak to. So if you are interested in attending that forum tomorrow night, then feel free to email me or email the planning division or go on the website to see the registration link to join that. And if you aren't able to join tomorrow night's forum, feel free to email me and I can send you an 8-minute video that goes through a lot of this.
Yep, so this is also on Andover TV right now, and they will be replaying it. I'll also have a recording myself. If you want to reach out to me, I can send you something as well.
Thank you.
Yep, go ahead, next question. I'm not sure what your name is.
Sorry, that's all. It seems that you're relocating the train station to the other side of the tracks. Is that correct?
So that's a great question. That was considered. The RFP does not require that. That would require the MBTA to give permission, and it also might require a great deal of money. And so we talk generally about improved connectivity and accessibility to the train station. One way to achieve those goals would be to move it to the other side of the tracks, but we are allowing developers who have money, who have relations with the MBTA and know how to do this, to propose that if they think it's feasible. But we didn't want to lay that down as the gauntlet because we're just not sure if it's even possible given the MBTA. Great question. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for your attention. I hope everybody votes. I hope everyone comes to town meeting, and I hope everyone can support the Historic Mill District.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Thank you.
Austin.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Austin. Have a good rest of
Okay.
your day.
Bye.